Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back in to some more bite-sized business advice, and I got an episode lined up today. I think it's going to blow your mind, and it's for sure going to make you think about doing business differently, at least a little bit. And we might change the whole landscape of how we do business in the future. We'll see, but we're all going to get rich by making production profitable. At least that's the claim on the episode. And I have a very special guest here to do that with me to unpack this and teach us all how to do it. So Noah Healy, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me here, Brandon.
It's a big claim to make in a 15-minute episode. I don't know if I know you feel confident about it, but I'm curious to hear what this means. So explain for the listener, when you say let's all get rich together by making production profitable. We got to talking before the recording. You already blew my mind, but if you could explain for the listener, what are you talking about when you say that?
So the world is economically foundationed in commodities, things like oil, steel, corn, wheat, rice, the stuff that we eat, the stuff that we make machines out of, the stuff that we wear, are made out of products that are produced all over the planet by many, many people uh, that aren't operating retail chains. So they are completely commoditized. So whether Farmer John or Farmer Joan sells you a bushel of wheat, it's the same bushel of wheat both ways, more or less. Uh, and the hyper efficient factories that we have require that commodified product in. If they have to pick over every single grain of rice to figure out which ones are good and which ones are bad and which ones taste the way they're supposed to taste and which ones don't, then they can't make, Rice Krispies or whatever. So that we have this system that produces pretty much everything. And that system is highly competitive. No MBA would ever, willingly go into a commodity production business. Uh, the problem that we have is that our markets aren't necessarily efficient at finding the prices that make our economy go. They're efficient at finding the prices that make the markets go. And what computers have done is allowed a split. The markets have essentially bifurcated, and they create effectively one market for the producers, which offers relatively low prices, and one market for the consumers, which offers relatively high prices. And it demonstrates that to the rest of us by the markets becoming less and less stable. And that's what we've been seeing over the last 30 to 50 years of the introduction of computers into the financial industry. The markets have become less and less stable. The thing is, computers have also been driving extraordinary innovations in productivity. So if we fix this minor algorithm problem with how the markets were put together, then the extraordinary gains in the ability to turn farmland into food in order to extract minerals from the ground, and all of these things would sort of rush back, and we would see extraordinary profit increases in what would still be high competition businesses.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective too, because I mean, let's take the farming example. Um, I mean, the stats are out there, and you hear farmers talking about it all the time. The price of what they're offered for their commodity, whether it's corn, grain, rice, whatever, is continually being driven as low as possible. They're not exactly profitable companies. It's very hard to run a profitable farm. Um, and there's not a whole lot of people getting into farming. If you have a generational family farm, that's kind of what you do, but people are not going to college for farming, right? So it's an industry that's being squeezed, and I think your argument is that all commodities are kind of in the same place or going the same direction. So what's the solution that you're saying? That's kind of where we are. Who benefits from this? How does the farmer then benefit from this type of a model? How do they make more money but also have the consumer not pay more money for those same products in the marketplace?
Well, the thing to understand is where the money's going. So money comes from the consumer. We have desires, we buy things. That money then goes into the marketplace searching for product. And it filters through the middlemen who are doing the process of figuring out what prices are available from product. The thing that computers have done is made the efficiency of the middleman's business process much greater. And so, whereas there were maybe 8 to 10 trades per actual delivery back in the 80s, today there's more like 40 to 50 trades. Um, and and there are current moves to crank the technology up by another factor of 10, which would likely result in another factor of 2 to 3 uh, more middlemen, if you will, between the two ends of this process. And so that's what's going on. The market is efficiently finding the price you will pay, and it's efficiently finding the price that they will produce, but it's lengthening the chain between you. So if you think about this, the amount of money we currently pay for stuff is the amount of money we're willing to pay for the amount of stuff that we're currently getting. Because if it wasn't, we wouldn't be doing it. So if we make that middle section much more efficient, then that same amount of money will produce even more money at the delivery end. Now, let's think about the delivery end of things. You're operating in a low margin business. So you said it's very hard to make farms profitable. Let's say your farm's operating at a 10% annual profit. And let's say we squeeze out some of this, mess, and we add 2% to your revenue. What does this do to your lifestyle? Well, profit is revenue minus cost. I add 2% to your revenue. I didn't change your costs. Your profit's now effectively 12%. You just have a 20% bump in your lifestyle. So, because these things are low margin businesses, because they're so massive, even relatively small efficiency squeezes turn into life transformational changes in the way that these businesses operate. And those numbers like 10 and 2, um, the so government figures the average wheat farm in the United States is operating with something like a 14% profit. And most farms aren't average. Lots of them are operating, a lot closer to the knuckle than that. Average transactional costs through the marketplace, again in the United States, is 16%. So more than half of the potential profits are being chewed up in just making the sale. It's even worse than retail, basically. Uh, if we cut that just in half and we add 8 percentage points to the other end of things, um, that would be a more than 50% improvement in those farms' profitabilities. And for the ones that are close to the knuckle, it's better. If you're operating a struggling farm with like a 4% profit margin and you add 8% to that, then you've just tripled the profitability of that farm.
So it's not necessarily that we're making production more efficient because basically what you're saying is everything stays the same. We just need to trim off a little fat from the middle section where money exchanges hands for goods.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we effectively already made production more efficient. Farms, for example, are something like 10x as productive per acre as they were when I was a child. Uh, and that's not uncommon across many, many fields. The productivity that computers have offered to virtually every field of human endeavor is amazing. The problem is that in a sales environment, like the markets, the salesmen are enjoying a larger advantage than their customers are. And so they're just taking the profits that the customers are generating for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, what pops into my head is like wholesaling in real estate, because basically you can go to a farmer and say, "I'll buy your corn for." I'm making these numbers up. You can obviously tell I know nothing about farming, so disclaimer. I'll buy your corn for $1 per pound, and then that same person will go to the grocery store or their local grocery distributor and say, "I'll sell you this for $3 a pound." And then next week they say 4 and 5 and 6, and they push the limits, and the farmer's still getting paid 1. So are you arguing also that, I mean, is this a way to connect the producer to the consumer? Are we kicking out the middleman entirely, or are we just saying you've gone too far, you need to take a step back?
So what we're really doing is re-engineering what the middleman's actual purpose is. So the middlemen aren't really performing that finding a buyer, finding a seller task from your model, because the to some extent the grocery store and the farmer both know that the markets exist and they're both coming to the same marketplace. What the middleman is doing is working out the price negotiation between those two sides, and that is itself a pretty valuable, product. Otherwise, the grocery store might be just telling the farmer is apparently willing to take $1 a pound in your example. So what if the grocery store that can sell for 7, 8, $9 a pound just says, I'll give you $1. Farmer goes away, he's busy, he doesn't know what's going on, and the grocery store pockets all the profits themselves. Um, and so that would be another case where things wouldn't really be profitable. So finding a way to bring the sides together is what the value proposition of markets are. Unfortunately, the way that the sides were brought together in the existing marketplace is by everybody being aware of everything that's going on. And so when somebody tries to create a split in the deal, people can see that that's happening, and they're like, whoa, 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 I'm not going to take the bad end of this bad deal that you've created. I want the deal that everybody's getting. Unfortunately, what computers did was increase the volume of trade so much that everybody can't be aware of what's going on anymore. Only people that invest in very expensive, very low latency, very high bandwidth server farms can know what's going on. And so what they do is they're just like, "Hey, everything's scary. Why don't you just take $1? I mean, that's what the market looks like." And, the set whenever you blink, it's like, "Oh, right. Yeah, this is the real marketplace over here. Like this is just what we're showing you while your eyes are open and looking at it." And then the same thing happens when the grocery store comes in. They're like, "Ooh, man, it's hard to get this stuff. I guess it's going to have to be 5." And they can't see what else is going on. There's nothing there for them. So what my system does is it creates a market in information that then guides a market in delivery. And so what happens as a result of that is the middlemen that have this expertise that are looking at weather charts and satellite images and polling people to figure out whether or not they're going to keep eating cereal and whatever. to figure out where prices are heading and try to keep track of it. They participate in the information market, which is more profitable for them than the existing markets are, because it's less expensive to just transact information than to pretend to transact, the entire economy, but not just the entire economy, 40 copies of the entire economy. Uh, and then the buyers and sellers, the people that are actually making these deliveries, they can then take a look at the information market, which is designed in a way that it simplifies everything and tells everybody what deal everybody's getting. And then they don't have to sort of play cops and robbers and try to track down these people that are trying to flee from them in cyberspace. They see the deal that everybody's getting and they say, yeah, that looks like a good deal to me. Or they say, you know what, I need to kind of figure out other things to do. I'm going to stay on the sidelines. Let's see what happens. And so the market has to find the prices that get everybody to come out and play. Those prices exist, uh, and we know what they are because they're what we think they are. It's just it's what we all collectively think they are. No one of us knows what they are.
So this is a big lift, right? It's a massive change in the way we're currently doing business and what's accepted. So how does this get adopted? That's the real question. I would assume it's got to be widespread mass adoption to some degree to really make it effective. Like what's your plan for that, the implementation phase?
So it can start with seeds, and there are four different people right now that are trying to plant some seeds and get markets rolling. The marketplace does not require widespread or mass adoption, but it does need enough participants to actually play the game. So several dozen, 50 is sort of my go-to number of a practical minimum of buyers and sellers in total that are interested in making trades. Uh, but once that happens, it snowballs very rapidly. The existing market systems began in the coffee houses of northern Italy and took over the world pretty much by itself. Um, the northern Italian city states were able to take over the economy of the Mediterranean without firing a shot, and and then the technology was adopted in Amsterdam and in other places in Northern Europe, who were then able to, uh, for a variety of historical reasons, become the new economic center of power. So once somebody gets an example off the ground, that gathers its own momentum because the people that are using the system make a lot more money than the people that aren't using the system. And given the choice between making a lot more money and not making a lot more money, humans usually prefer the former.
Makes complete sense. I think that's pretty in line with human nature for not doing anything extra or illegal or unethical. Um, yeah, I mean that's really interesting. When you say 50, are you saying 50 within the same industry, so like within the steel industry, farming industry, or is it just 50 total people?
So 50 within the same product.
Okay.
So something like the farming industry has, dozens
Yep,
and
dozens
dozens
of
of
products. Yeah,
modified products. Even steel has different grades. So you need sort of a representative sample of buyers and sellers to make it work for them to be able to aggregate together and negotiate. What the data information market is about is a bilateral collective bargaining position. So if if there's not enough people to sort of make a collective, there's not really any point. You and I can make an agreement using my technology, but we can also just make an agreement personally. The existing market is based on scaling out those personal agreements by just doing them very, very, very quickly. on the order of millions of times per second, which obviously we can't do because we can't physiologically make decisions that quickly. Um, my system scales it out in a completely different way that is compatible with human physiology.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, this has been, it's opened my mind for sure, because when you're talking about changing the way business is done, changing the way markets operate, obviously that's a big conversation that should not take place in 20 minutes, but we went ahead and did it anyway. But there's a phase two, obviously. We have to talk about it, and then we have to test it, implement it, and then it needs to be adopted and scaled, just like everything you said from Northern Italy needs to take place again. So you have an interesting challenge in front of you, though. So I'm going to put a website on the screen. Tell me a little bit about what you have going on as far as your next step and your ask for the listener.
Sure. Well, so one of the things I'm doing is attempting to patent the technology in order to be able to attract the funding to actually launch. The people that are launching right now are doing so under the auspices of the open source license that exists for the entire planet. Um, and the patent office, so I applied for the full patent application in 2016. They said yes in 2019, and then they ignored that yes. When we asked them about it, they told us that they hadn't figured out why they weren't doing it yet, but they would get back to us. And they got back to us with the claim that this technology wasn't an improvement on existing marketplaces. Um, there's some fairly well known mathematical papers describing algorithmic improvement, some of which are hosted by the federal government itself. So we pointed to those and pointed to how this system reduces the amount of time and energy and data that the systems need to process. And that pretty conclusively uh, destroyed that counter argument. And so then um, they said yes again. And then 3 weeks later, they withdrew that yes. And this time they had a reason on deck. And the reason they had was that I would control the economy if this patent were offered. Now, in addition to what we talked about earlier, we're also in communication with the people that we're allowed to talk to at the patent office. And they said that they understand that this is total nonsense, but that they're under orders from people and they don't agree with those people, but they also don't understand those people. And so this claim that I would control the economy is they said it's the best they could do of describing what the people that they're under orders from are saying, and that we can't we couldn't do the same thing again. My lawyers and I can't, point out that this is nonsense and have them reverse their decision, because this isn't their decision anymore. It's out of their hands. So we applied for an appeal, going to the patent board. Last year, that appeal was scheduled to be heard next year. So July of 2025 is when the appeal is set to be heard. Um, I feel pretty good. They have no legal or logical basis upon which to stand, uh, but I don't know what's going to happen. And so, in the interim, on somebody's suggestion, I started a petition on change.org for people that would like to support the existence of better marketplaces and a functioning economy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's welcome to America. That's the government. That's about all I can say about that situation. Really unfortunate, but I hope that goes well for you, and people see the truth at least. And that's, yeah, no more needs to be said before I get canceled and taken off the internet. But anyway, Noah, thank you for being here. It's the website there to the patent, to the petition, is on the screen. It's in the show notes down below wherever you're watching or listening. But Noah, this was an awesome episode. Thanks for coming by and explaining your solution to change the world. Really cool. For those of you watching and listening, wherever you are, make sure you subscribe. We want to keep bringing these episodes to you 5 days a week, so we can help you think differently about your business, about today, the world, and the economic markets. and help you grow your business one little bit at a time. We'll see you on tomorrow's episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Thanks for being here.